Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks you for attending our In Alliance in Training webinar today. Today's topic is entitled Beyond Promotion, Integrating Real Economic Development into Your Downtown Program. This webinar is geared mainly to community development organizations such as a Main Street program, and it will entail giving you ideas on how to work with entrepreneurs in a fashion that will help you help them help develop their downtown. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes here. You will have opportunity to ask questions. What we'd like is for you to raise your hand, which you can see how that is done over at the left-hand corner. Just click on your hand and then type your question in. It does have an audio feature. We have done several of these, and we find that it typically works best if you choose to do the raise your hand and type in your question, as I will reread your question to the entire audience. Typically, if you have questions as we go along, raise your hand, ask your question. I will take a few seconds in between slide transfers to look and see if there's any questions and get those answered. But more effectively, a lot of times people like to wait till the end to have their question answered, which we will have time at the conclusion of the presentation to do so. My contact information is over on the right-hand side. It will also be provided to you at the end of this webinar in case you would like to contact me regarding the contents of this webinar, or if you would like to speak of other topics for downtown development. With that said, I would like to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. It's very clear in today's marketplace that having opportunity for business startup is not enough. Having those vacant buildings and having financing set up waiting for the potential entrepreneur to come by and fill your facility is becoming more and more less of a way that downtowns are being developed. It's very important that you as a community organization must be able to answer their questions in a variety of ways that in the past you may have felt that it wasn't your responsibility or you handed them off to someone else. But as we know, entrepreneurs like to, once they make a connection with somebody, there's a trust factor there, and so when they build a trust with you and your organization, they tend to come to you for a lot of different answers. And it's always important that you have the correct answers for them, but to never speak out of your jurisdiction of ideas as well as what you have the authority to speak on. This is a very pretty intense list of questions that entrepreneurs ask themselves soon after they come up with an idea. If they're thinking about moving to your community with a restaurant or an entertainment facility, or if they've got a product they want to sell, or if they have a service that they're wanting to put up in a bricks and mortar a place in your community, they'll start asking themselves a variety of these questions. These questions are something that you can help them get answered throughout the process. The main thing, without going through each question here bullet by bullet, the main thing that they're asking themselves is the product or service idea that they have come up with, is it new, unique, or has it been done in the past? Is it a twist on an old idea, or is it completely new in its delivery? What is the current competition for that product or service in the marketplace that they're identifying? How many customers can they reach? In other words, what is the customer depth, the potential that they can find out there? And then what are the resources that they're going to need in order to get this business up and running? And that, of course, includes capital as well as employees and other resources. Could be that they need so much parking. It could be that they need so much visible storefront. It could be that the building that they've identified may need some improvements, and therefore they would need funding. There's a lot of questions that an entrepreneur asks. So in order to look at where the community organization can get involved with the entrepreneur, let's work backwards in the understanding of the entrepreneurial mindset. When a new business comes to town, what it is, it's a combination of the entrepreneur's resources. In other words, their experience, their equity that they're installing, their network of business resources that they have, as well as maybe bringing management teams, putting together employees. In other words, what is internal to their business plan is what they bring to the table, and they're leveraging the resources brought to them by the lender, by the community, and any other governmental or quasi-governmental organization within that jurisdiction. So in other words, they bring their resources and they leverage them with the other resources, and therefore you have your new business. In order for them to determine if that new business is going to be feasible, then when they're looking at moving forward in their idea, they've already considered what's the location going to be. Do they have alternate locations? Is it alternate locations within your community, or are there competing communities out there that they are looking at? What is their customer base? What is the demographic of that customer? Is it typically a female shopper over the age of 21? Is it typically a family-oriented customer? What exactly is their customer, and they can quickly look at any demographic information online and have that delivered to them within a matter of seconds of doing a simple Google search. What is the current competition level for in their business model? And of course, last but not least, what's it going to cost them to get into this business? How much can they put in it themselves, and how much are they going to have to use other people's money? Now, the entrepreneurial mindset, and it's often taught to entrepreneurs at a very early stage of their development, is it's always better to use someone else's money than their own. So they're going to be looking for capital out there. And then last but not least, the initial stages to the new business development, how that they came up with moving from a feasible business idea that's coming from their idea, moving to a feasible business idea, to starting the new business, is that at the very initial stages they had to identify a location and they had to put together their research. From a community-based organization that does not do any type of lending, does not do any type of property management, if you're merely there as a resource and a director per se to other resources, a liaison to other resources in the community and region, then this is the stage that you have to be as a community director in a community organization. This is the stage that you have your most crucial responsibility, and that's in helping with identifying the location and in helping them with their research. Give you some ideas for the rest of our topic today as to how this can play through for you. It is very important as a community, and I know the National Trust and the Main Street Center, as well as several other organizations out there, continue to build a case that it's imperative that there be a building inventory on place. I'll give you an example of some questions and a survey that you can use just a little later on in the presentation. But it's imperative that you have a building inventory, and that includes all commercial, and if we were doing this as a total community program, all commercial and residential building stock, but definitely from an economic development perspective, to have all commercial building stock on file, and that means whether it is vacant or not vacant. As well as you want as much history and contact information as you possibly can get on that building, and we'll talk about that in depth here in just a little bit. You want to have a real good handle on what the competitive environment is. Maybe having a retail market assessment done, or conduct one yourself, to where that you can give an idea to the potential entrepreneur as to what currently the competitive position is in your community, and especially how it relates to their product or service idea. One of the things that I've personally experienced through the years, both being someone who has consulted and worked with budding entrepreneurs, as well as also being worked on downtown development projects personally myself, is what is the current level of business community satisfaction. You've got to keep in mind that any entrepreneur, especially in a downtown setting, is going to venture into the downtown, and he or she is going to make their way around the downtown visiting with various business owners. Many of them will not even be in their competitive market, but just getting a general idea of their satisfaction. It's imperative that you know who is satisfied with the downtown business environment and who is not. We all know that there's an old sorehead or one or two of those in every community that just doesn't like anything that takes place, tends to be real negative. Sometimes that person's been in business for 50 years there or more, and other times they've been in business for less than a year. There's no identifying a particular characteristic of these individuals, but the thing is, we do know that they are available. It happens more times than not. The entrepreneur that visits your downtown does find these individuals, and they also find the individuals that are quite happy with everything and quite happy with their own business, how it's inserted into the community and what their future holds for them. But there's also the other side. So it's very important that you as a community have these particular individuals identified, and when you're talking with budding entrepreneurs, be very upfront with them and be very open that these are some people that you should talk to. And oh, by the way, here's a couple of people that are in town that just aren't satisfied, and go draw your own conclusions. It's better for you for the entrepreneur will have more trust in you if since we intuitively know that those people exist. And instead of us going looking for them when we're making investment decisions, point us in the direction of them. Because a lot of times if there is an overwhelming community satisfaction with what's going on, those people tend to be kind of go by the wayside. And then also they're going to look for cash, and then they may speak to you of what's the availability of employees in the business. So if you've got any kind of demographic, or you've got any kind of job labor market information, it's very important to have that on hand. Even though that they can get that from other sources, if you don't have it, make sure that you direct them to where they can get that. And we'll talk about the cash available here in just a second. When the entrepreneur's done with their research, which typically this takes anywhere from a couple weeks to about 60 days, it is not as long as you might think that it is done, because really most entrepreneurs don't have the time to do in-depth research, and lastly, they a lot of times don't have the amount to pay a third party to go out and do the research for them. So they do their own, and they make a very quick assessment. So you have to have these answers answered as many as possible from very good to excellent as you can muster in the time that they spend with you. They're going to get a handle on overall business satisfaction. They're going to talk to as many businesses as they feel that they need to get a handle on is the business climate in your community or your downtown, whatever you're targeting, is it favorable to new business moving in? And that is always going to be garnered from other businesses in the downtown. This goes without saying, though, that we want to make sure that your government, I've actually been in situations where council people posed a question to clients of mine as to why would you want to set up a business here. And though you may laugh at that, I'm sure some of you may have had experiences with that in the past. It's important that your government be identified as being very proactive for business development, as well as your organizations and all the other organizations in the town. If they are not, that becomes a job on your part to see what can be done to remedy this, as well as let them know that they're damaging future development in the community. Make sure that you have a real good handle on what the space opportunities are, and that comes from your building inventory, because they're going to look and hopefully identify one vacancy that fits their needs. It's always nice if they've got a couple that they can look at, but as we know, more times than not, that doesn't really come to fruition, but you're looking for at least that one space that fits their needs, and that also includes their parking. They're going to assess and evaluate what will their competitive position be. Let's take something that is very crucial and pertinent to most downtowns, and that's new restaurant development. If you're looking at a downtown that has no restaurants, and you're looking at being the first there, well, your competitive position is it's minimal, but on the reverse of that, is your customer base going to venture to the downtown to enjoy a meal when obviously probably the restaurants are located close in proximity to at another location around the downtown. So these questions will have to be answered by the entrepreneur, but they want to be able to know what the depth is. And of course, last but not least is availability of cash. By the way, these are in priority order. They probably should be bulleted 1 through 4. Cash is the last and final assessment that an entrepreneur will do to conduct a business in the downtown, and you should keep that always in mind. Answer the question when asked, when they want to know about the amount of loans and other programs that are out there. Let them know what it is, or direct them to where those resources are at. But it's not something that you want to lead with in any conversation, saying that you have a TIF, an enterprise zone, a revolving loan fund, any facade improvement programs, whatever that might be. We're just assuming you're having them, and the entrepreneur will also assume that. The next few slides are going to talk about how you can give the entrepreneurial interest documentation in hand. And they can be in a variety of formats. They can all be stored on your website, which is what entrepreneurs like, which is what I like, which is hopefully what you like. It's a place that can be downloaded at any given time by potential entrepreneurs. Do not put it passcoded. Do not hide it on your website, but just put it under a category that if you're moving to our community or our district, these are the resources that we think would be most beneficial to you. Allow them to download them at their own luxury, and then you fill in the blanks from there. One thing that I see very little from downtown development organizations is to have a real good history of the business activity that's taken place in that community. And if you can have that back to 5 years, that gives the entrepreneur what they are looking for. There's very little research that's available to an entrepreneur, especially in smaller type retail districts, that gives them an idea on what happened in the past. They know what's currently there, and that can be very simple by just picking up the telephone book, as well as there's tons of other resources out there, including graphical information system data, which we'll talk about that also later in the program here. But it's very important that the budding entrepreneur or the entrepreneur look at what is not only currently there in the business environment, but what has been there over the last few years. And let's go back to our restaurant example. A business that has or a community, a district that has a potential to add an additional restaurant or more, it's probably has happened that you've had restaurants that have come and gone, and there's been a variety of cuisines, been a variety of reasons why those have come and gone, but it's crucial to the entrepreneur to know that. Don't hide that from them, because it's one of those things that will come out as they're walking around the town visiting with other businesses, and they say, you know, I'm looking at putting an Italian restaurant, and they say, you know, there's been 2 or 3 Italian restaurants here, none's really made it. And the entrepreneur says, well, really, when? Well, they were 40 years ago and they didn't make it. And they say, oh, well, then that, you know, obviously the appetite of the customer base has probably changed. I have a better chance of that. But if they say, you know, they left last year, they came, then it's their job to find out why they left. And we'll talk about that again here in just a second. And it's very important that on your, what I like to see ideally on the business inventory, if you have any vacant buildings, if there was any businesses that have been located in there, list the name of those businesses, what of course, what industry it was in, if it wasn't clear, and be honest and accurate as to why they left. These are the primary reasons why businesses close. The number one reason is inadequate cash flow. If I were teaching an entrepreneurial class on that, I would say that it probably, the reason that they have inadequate cash flow as it relates to bullet number 2 on here is they are poor managers. They either did not forecast the cash flow that they need, or they obviously were not able to understand their market well enough to suffice to have the cash necessary to get them through the tough times. However, it's the number one reason that is cited as inadequate cash flow. I would highly recommend that you never include that on your list, your documented list, as to why a business left your town, because it doesn't really mean anything, and there's so many factors that go into it. The next can be poor management, and that could be backslash and say inexperienced management. Find that to be more the case than necessarily just poor management. So what you want to do is, if it was poor management, list it down there and say, hey, they just didn't have experience running that restaurant. They didn't have experience in business. They had other jobs. This was just part-time. They couldn't run it all the time. Put in there very specifically what you know about the management team. Of course, then another reason that a lot of businesses go, and by the way, these are ranked in order of the reasons that most businesses close in the downtown district also. The next is inconsistency of product or service. In other words, went to the restaurant and had a bad meal. Either the food was not adequate or the service was below par. And that tends to be a reason that customers start infrequenting a restaurant or any other business for that matter. Could be a competitive shift. Something's happened in the marketplace. A new competitor has moved in, or there could be a change in customers' buying habits and cause that to also happen. Most of our downtowns 50 to 75 years ago all had a hardware store in the downtown. Though we do have those from time to time, they are not as frequent as they used to be when hardware moved to the more box store type situation. So it's merely that there was an environmental factor that caused that competitive shift to happen. Another reason is sometimes the owners either pass away, they get sick, or they are not on site as much as they were before, and that becomes a loss from the owners or from key managers that then it starts taking it away from the business. And of course, that could be bulleted under poor management also. But at least it shows. I like to distinguish the two because probably when the key managers and on-site owners were assuming the business was flourishing and doing well, and this bullet point is just merely bringing a chance that something has changed there, that when they left it no longer is flourishing where that it did before. Could be that it was an inadequate location. Something's changed that has caused the business to no longer be in a traffic area that meets the demands of the customer. Sometimes we see this in when roads are rerouted, when there's a change in parking lots and parking systems. There's all kinds of things that can influence this, but that could also be a reason for a business to close. And then last but not least is new governmental regulations. I see this to be the most infrequent thing that could happen, but it does lend itself to a reason that a business could close. Okay, when looking for business details, this is put together by the Missoula Downtown Association. It's one I use a lot of time in these talks. I really like their survey form. You can just Google their website, and you can download them directly off of there to give you an idea on how they collect a lot of information. Without going through this in detail, it gives a tremendous amount of current business owner information, not only from who the exact contact information is for the business, but it gives an idea on the available space that they have, how much is being used, and for what types of places it's being used in, what they're currently renting or leasing it for. Excuse me. Also gives an idea on what business and workforce data, information that they have imperative to their business. And what I like about it, it also talks about how they market their business, where they're actually located at and what they consider to be their customer base, their hours of operation. It gives a potential entrepreneur a real handy idea when they browse through all these building inventories and say, wow, this business is doing this, and there's all these businesses that are using billboards, that they're using these type of things. This is something I probably need to consider in my advertising budget because it seems to be something that's working for them, so it would probably work for me also. And of course, looking on the right is just an overall looking at the downtown inventory to be able to identify which one of the all the businesses that are in the downtown collectively, looking at what the assessed values are, what the property availability is, any historic status that they might have in the community, and of course particular construction dates and any zoning that fits in that particular building. So a combination of the two, though it's an in-depth survey and it has some of the most crucial information that is most important. If these are kept by address in a file or collected electronically and kept by address, it gives as businesses change inside of each building, it would give the potential entrepreneur a history of that particular building and the lives of the different business ventures that have taken place inside the community. One thing that I like to see that is starting to become just a little bit more prominent now because of the downtown organization's relationship they have with the city, with their local city government, is to have on hand current retail GIS data, or graphical information systems data. There's tons of reports that these programs can produce, but one of the most important ones for the interested entrepreneur is, of course, the surplus and leakage factor. This particular photo in front of you right now, the graph in front of you, shows that there's a tremendous amount of leakage in this particular community for a variety of retail establishments. The only thing that seems to be a surplus of is they do have some health and personal care stores, but they still not fulfilling all the needs of the customers. So as you can tell, this is a very, very small community with very few retail sources available to them. So it gives you an idea on where that entrepreneurs can look at their industry and how it best fits in there and where people are spending their money at currently. One of the parts that is a lot of times underestimated by downtown organizations where they can lend business plan support. I just talked about all of the competitive analysis that can be available and on hand, which that is definitely going to be a part of any business plan that's out there, but also the available building inventory, and gives you, and it helps anybody that's doing any type of business planning to have a resource available to them for all the research that your downtown organization can have available to the business planner. I don't typically recommend that downtown organizations get involved in detail in the business plan, but they definitely can lend themselves in support. And just please keep in mind that very few entrepreneurs have the ability to do business planning. They're very good at selling or creating or manufacturing or some aspect of their product or service. But when it comes to putting it all together in a business plan and working out all the details, it's very difficult. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs often go out and seek other resources. Of course, there's tons of paid resources out there. But in your community, there is a small business development center that services your district, because the nationwide network does claim that every county and every community is serviced by a center in the nation. And you might also have a SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. You might also have a branch of them near you that could help out. But first and foremost, for business planning, you can't beat the SBDC, and there are tons of resources and expertise in helping the entrepreneur complete a business plan. Another thing that I like to see downtown organizations do is, bring in potential customers, bring in people that they can talk to, perhaps even your board. Have them use your board, have them use customers as a focus group type setting, and to bounce their product or service off of them to get an idea, is this something that they would purchase? Is this something that they would frequent? And it gives the entrepreneur some unpaid, some unsolicited resources out there to determine whether or not their business idea has feasibility to it. And then, of course, you also need to direct them to all the financial support that is out there. Like I mentioned earlier in the slide, it's one of the least, it's the least important in the research phase, but it is something that undoubtedly will come up. So it's important that you talk about the loans and the TIFs and all of the improvements or the financial opportunities that are available to the entrepreneur. Identify those programs from the point of view and break those down. Local banks a lot of times will have specific programs for small business development. They may have some for a specific district. Your governmental agencies, such as your city government, they're in control of a lot of the public financing. There may be other quasi-government organizations, such as planning commissions, that may have different types of incentive programs for your community business development. And of course, last but not least, the state. More times than not, federal is omitted from this list because more times than not, federal programs often do not apply to local community downtown development. They're a lot of times on the larger scale. And then from your role in the financing end, if your organization does not actually offer any type of loans or lending programs or improvement programs, that just need to make sure that you offer to set up the introduction with those that can make that decision for them. It's a great handshake that you can present to delivering a handshake to someone else for them. One thing that you need to keep in mind as we close is an entrepreneur is a negotiator, a visionary, and a thinker. Don't always assume that they're going to have a complete understanding of the details that it takes in order to get their business going, especially when we see these a lot of times in downtown business development things. Is an entrepreneur a lot of times will be approaching you because it's their first real venture. Your serial entrepreneurs tend to have already gone through some of the challenges of opening a business, so they know how to get their question answered, and they know better how to look at their market and understand what they're seeing. But the new entrepreneur is somebody that just has a grand idea and is full of energy and has an idea that they know that they think their product or service is one of the best out there. It's for you to help them be very grounded in this and to understand what is their true feasibility of the program, and helping them with this and having available all these research items at their fingertips will help them greatly improve their sustainability with their community. As I often say in a lot of my talks, 80% of all small business that starts in this country fails the first year. Of those 20% that make it, only half of those will be around in years 3 or 4. So inside of 3 years from today, every business that starts today, only 10% will be around. So business coming and going, it's part of what makes this country great. It gives your community the ability to keep the door constantly open and moving to when somebody has a failure that they didn't foresee and has to leave your marketplace, that probably there's one right around the corner that wants back in. but the ones that sustain themselves the best are the ones that plan the most for all of the challenges that are up and coming as in their business life cycle. As always try to leave with a quote before we answer questions. Theodore Roosevelt quoted one time, and this relates so particular to businesses: whenever you're asked if you can do a job, tell them, "Certainly I can," then get busy and find out how to do it. And that particular quote is could be said by any entrepreneur out there that is, for a lack of a better term, worth their salt. If they're willing to take the definition of an entrepreneur always has the term risk involved with it, no matter what dictionary you look it up in, and they're willing to accept that risk and they're willing to take that risk. But a lot of times they don't haven't been able to identify all that risk, and that is where your organization can help them see this more realistically. With that said, I'd like to open up the next few minutes for questions. Please either raise your hand or type in your question, and I'd be glad to get those answered. There was a question wanting to know if the slide that I had of the picture that showed the building inventory, is that something that is universally available? Yes, there are several ones that I use, but just for the sake of this presentation, just Google building inventory sample, and you will find several that are out there that you can easily adapt to your needs. Other questions? Where can you find, I have a question here, where can you find the statistics for leakage in your area? Typically, those are going to come from someone that has access to a geographic informational system. I would start with your local city or county engineering department. If they can't give that to you, then go out to a regional organization such as a planning commission or an economic development group. And if they can't get it, reach out to your community college and or university that services your area. And then if they can't get it, then there are tons of private consultants out there that can do it for you also, which our company is one of those. There's another question. What are the financial programs that you most frequently see in downtown economic development toolboxes? First and foremost is the TIF, the tax increment financing. That one we see more times than not. And then to the side of that one, we see either programs that are set up by SSA, Special Servicing Districts, and then also enterprise zone benefits. So that is the three from the public end that we see the most. And then, of course, not to forget the low-interest programs such as the revolving loan fund, which those are typically geared towards a job creation or retention. It varies from state to state, but mostly they follow the federal guideline, which they give out $15,000 per job created or retained, no more than 50% of the project cost. However, those particular guidelines I just gave you on that do vary from community to community because they have the ability to set their own guidelines on that. Any other questions that I haven't addressed? Okay. I want to thank you for attending the presentation today. You are on our mailing list, so as we develop new programs for webinar formats, we'll definitely keep you posted. Those all of our webinars are free of charge and 30 minutes in length. We look forward to your ideas. If you happen to have a webinar that you think that you would like to have more training on, some more information on, please send it our way. We'll see what we can do with internally or through our resources to bring you that webinar. And our goal is to disseminate this information to you in a timely fashion and in a low-cost manner. Thank you very much for attending the In-Training In Alliance webinar today, and look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you.